Albanese's got more problems than just China. While he's there, new polling from Labor-aligned RedBridge Group shows Labor have suffered a drop in support with blue-collar voters. Now, on two-party preferred, Labor is still ahead of the coalition, but what's interesting is the coalition now lead Labor with blue-collar workers. And since the referendum, there's been a massive slump in Labor's primary vote among 35 to 49-year-olds. So, Joe, you're the Labor man on the panel. We'll go to you. How worried should Labor be by these new polling numbers?
Extremely. And I can only hope that they're alive enough to the problem to know that they have to do something about it and not sort of sleepwalking into disaster as some were with the Voice campaign, saying, oh, no, it's fine, we can still win it, there's all these undecideds out there. You will notice if you go back and look at anything that I've been shouting from the rooftops over the past few years, Joel Fitzgibbon, strangely enough and prophetically enough, had an article in The Australian just yesterday saying we seem to have an institutionalised, progressive and woke public service that in a sort of Humphrey Appleby way is running the government. RedBridge Group, by the way, is Labor and a Liberal guy, so it's really even, and it's Cos Samaras, former Victorian Assistant Secretary, is very smart, very sharp, often gives advice that people don't want to hear, and that's one of the reasons I really respect him, and I've used some of his polling before as well. Having said all that, this is the problem, right? The problem is, are you actually going to accept a model in which the Australian Labor Party no longer represents the views, the values and the aspirations of Labor people, of working class people? Now, this is a debate that's been happening a lot inside the party and outside the party. As Joel Fitzgibbon used to say, I just want to put the Labor back into the Labor Party.
Are they aware of it, Joe? Are they acknowledging?
Well, this is the problem. So, and again, this is why, and again, you have numbnuts. I don't know if we can start swearing on the show.
You've
tonight,
said, I think, piss twice.
I was going to say something much worse than that. You have these upper middle class socialists, basically, who are tertiary educated, started with the boomers who all went to uni under Whitlam. They never really left the inner city. The inner city, as we know, is an enclave of the Labor left. That is the few remaining seats that haven't already been overrun by the Greens, and there's a lesson there as well. And then at the same time, you have these rich leafy suburbs that are now being overrun by the Teals. Now, the reason why I really don't like the Teals, apart from the fact that they're just the most insufferable bores and snobs and humorless Karens ever, who have done absolutely nothing, is that by rolling Josh Frydenberg and putting the Liberal Party, the coalition, into the hands of a cop from regional Queensland, a cop from the Gold Coast, right? That means the Liberal Party's only possible means for survival is to target working class suburban and regional seats that once voted for the Labor Party, right? So the sort of blue-collar voters that might have gone from Labor to One Nation once upon a time, the coalition needs to go after them. And if Labor doesn't hold on to them and give them everything they want, then it will lose them to the coalition and it will find that it's lost all its inner city lefty seats to the Greens, and we will end up becoming, God help us, and I will honestly stand in a bath and drink hemlock if this happens, we will end up becoming a kind of tealish party full of rich progressives lecturing other people about what they should do, like we're their social betters. And that is exactly what you saw reflected in the Victorian state election, which everyone hailed as this amazing thing, the Dan Slide Mark II, right? He went backwards. Dan Andrews and Victorian socialist left Labor went backwards in right-wing, Labor right, working class suburbs, the western suburbs of Melbourne. They picked up seats in leafy, teal, Liberal seats that they never thought they would win in a lifetime. And I do not want to have anything to do with a Labor Party that relies on the backing of people like that at the expense of working class.
So let me ask Evelyn, why has Albanese lost the working class?
Well, he lost because he alienated at least 60% of the nation. Like when he took a side with the referendum, he didn't just present the referendum, he literally picked a side, and he picked the losing side, and the losing side is the minority. So he literally is up against, like I said, at least 60% of the nation. He didn't read the room, he didn't read the nation, and he alienated most of his voter base. And this was his biggest downfall. He came across like he was more interested in special interest groups than the nation as a whole. And a lot of people are looking at that and saying, you know what, I don't want a piece of that again. And what Joe was saying is exactly what happened to the Liberal Party. The Liberal Party spent their entire time during politics alienating their voter base whilst trying to please a group of people who were never going to vote for them. And that's what Labor seemed seem like they're doing now. No politician seems to be listening to the people. And when's it going to stop? Like, when is someone actually going to represent what the people want? Because you got these ridiculous green policies coming in. Every single person I speak to thinks that they're ridiculous. You'd have to be a sociopath to not want to look after the environment, but everyone goes, that's not the way to do it. But every politician is too afraid to say the quiet part out loud. And this is what's going to happen.
Paul, can I ask you this? Tony Barry from RedBridge, he said, quote, "The honeymoon is over for Albanese and he's now sleeping on the couch." Here's my question for you. Are people ready to get into bed with Peter Dutton?
Well, according to the very same findings, part of the issue was, and the reason why the dam wall hadn't broken and why we weren't talking about one-term or two-term max government, like we were under sort of Rudd and Gillard, is that they haven't made the transition to the opposition being the government that they want. Now, this is a function of Australian politics and the way that we argue our politics, that we all know what we don't like all the time, and the hope of the person hoping to make the most of that don't like makes himself such a small target and just talks about what you don't like the whole time, hoping you get so annoyed that you basically go into a deal to say, if I vote for this person, then all the noise goes down on the one that I don't like. We've seen this multiple times, and that's the entire Labor strategy about Peter Dutton, which is this Get Dutton thing. It's the entire strategy of the Democrats with Get Trump, and it resonates with enough people. But I've got to say very briefly, my wild prediction about where Labor's trouble starts in the next little while. It's not going to be in a surging Liberal Party being able to take over long-term Labor seats like the southwest of Sydney. Di Lee was able to show that a seat that the Labor Party takes for granted at such a level that they could grab someone like Christina Keneally and drop on top are going to start to demand local representation. And the local representation isn't the white bloke who's been a union leader.